Class C's Repsol.
The historic South African Grand Prix circuit in the river port of East London is steeped in history. The circuit hosted the first South African Grand Prix event in pre-World War II days and remains a favourite with many current drivers. The recent fourth round of the Wesbank Challenge for modified touring cars saw some of the most spectacular race machinery in the country make the trip to the Eastern Cape for the first time this year. For a number of new cars, it was their East London debut, and this added a little spice to the occasion. Going into the East London race, Chris Aberdeen topped the championship log in the Rothmans Audi Quattro. Aberdeen was closely followed by Sarah van der Merwe and reigning Class A champion Terry Moss. In the Manufacturers' Championship, Toyota held a healthy lead over Nissan and Audi. Qualifying sessions always provide for drama. Pole position carries a psychological edge and can provide other benefits.
We spent quite a bit of time here sorting it out, and we're there at the moment.
Obviously, it's important with a turbocharged car to have a good time here because you're at a disadvantage to the normally aspirated.
Yes, and it's also quite a long drag to the first corner, so if you're not in front, if you're not into the first corner first, you could be behind them for quite a while. And like I said, the car's handling very well, so if I can get to the first corner first, I can probably keep ahead, I hope.
Sarah van der Merwe put the new Sasol Ford Telstar on pole. While the experienced Superband went his merry way, young Richard Sorensen in the Count Byron Accord Sound Audi Quattro gave himself a bit of a fright. No damage done, unless it was to ego. West Rand panel beater Ben Morgenrud always goes well in East London and was a fancy candidate for pole position in the new Sasol Mazda MX-6. Morgenrud ended up in second on the grid, but was not disappointed.
We would have liked to have had pole. We're second on the grid, and the car's better than it was with the first outing. We've still got some work to do, so under the circumstances, I'm not disappointed.
Veteran Gary Dunkley also had his problems in the Sabat Porsche running in Class B. Once again, no damage done. With modified touring car regulations providing for weight penalties for previous race winners, the Rothmans Audi team was resigned to not being factors in the race for pole position.
The Audi is heavily penalised. We're running at 1,250 kilos. We're running with a small restrictor. But it's one of those things in Wesbank racing, you have to learn to live with it. We'll just have to get better, and we might have to just bite the bullet for today, and we'll see how it goes in the race.
Coastal circuits always provide normally aspirated cars with a distinct advantage. With this in mind, Morgenrud was the danger man as far as most were concerned.
Definitely the naturally aspirated engine has an advantage down here. I actually feel that the naturally aspirated engine should be penalised more when it comes onto the coast.
The grid saw Sarah van der Merwe and Ben Morgenrud closely followed by the three Audi Quattros. Johan Coetzee led the Class B contingent, with Serge Damso the first of the Class C cars. Then came drama. On the warm-up lap for the first heat, an oil pipe broke on the Sasol Ford Telstar. While marshals battled to clean the tracks, the Van der Merwe car was wheeled back to the pit for some hasty repairs.
An oil line came up on the warm-up lap and spilled oil all over the S's, and we had to idle back here. I don't know whether the engine is damaged, we hope not, but we'll see later on.
The incident led to a lengthy break while the circuit was cleared and the Sasol Ford readied for combat once more. The Ford team was also fined 750 Rand by race stewards, but Van der Merwe was back in action when the first heat eventually got underway. Clear skies and blue ocean make for a picturesque setting for some serious motor racing. As the pack stormed down the main straight to the frighteningly quick Potter's Pass corner, it was Van der Merwe who managed to take the Sasol Ford Telstar to the front of the field. Moss, Morgenrud, Aberdeen and Sorensen slotted in behind the Ford, which still had a reliability question mark hanging over its head after the oil dropping incident. It was no surprise to see Van der Merwe coming under early pressure from Moss in the first of the Rothmans Audis. Strapped into a race car, Moss has an aggressive streak a mile wide, and all he had on his mind was to get into the lead and stay there. Moss was being shadowed by Morganrood with Aberdeen and Sorensen 4th and 5th. The race cam action from the back of the Van der Merwe car gives an indication of just how hard Moss was trying to get past the Ford. For those behind Van der Merwe, cement dust laid down to try and soak up oil patches on the circuit was an additional problem. There were as yet no signs that the Sasol Ford had suffered any engine damage when the oil pipe broke during the warm-up lap. Van der Merwe was still under enormous pressure from Moss, with drama about to unfold. Down the main straight, the brake duct on the Ford came adrift. When Moss tried to dive inside Van der Merwe at Potter's Pass on lap 2, the Rothmans Audi driver put a wheel in the dirt and the car shot off the circuit. With his steering jammed, Moss was headed at a rapid rate of knots for a large patch of East London fauna and flora. A shaken Moss was unscathed. The stricken brake duct continued to trail behind the Ford, and the Aberdeen Audi also hit problems when a rear window broke loose.
I'm still a little, should I say, concerned with what happened. I haven't got a sort of definite reason what happened. All of a sudden the car jolted to the side, and I battled with steering. I didn't have steering. I don't know whether there was something in the car which I touched. I really can't give an exact explanation. It all happened. It was something extraordinary that happened.
Moss could not have picked a more frightening place to give himself a fright.
Well, I think Potters and Rifle after that is probably two of the most frightening corners anywhere in the world. You know, it's real big ball affairs, and I think every racetrack needs something like that. You know, if you go to the smaller tracks, it's fairly monotonous. Kyalami has got some hairy corners, but it's fairly safe compared to this track. If you go off there, we were doing about 280 kilometers an hour through Rifle yesterday, and once or twice I had a wheel or two in the dirt, and it's quite scary.
The gradually disintegrating brake duct was still trailing behind the Sasol Ford. Van der Merwe was now coming under pressure from Ben Morganrood, who appeared to have the measure of Chris Aberdeen in the remaining Rothmans Audi. There were no dramas for Class B leader Johan Koetsier in the Gear Max Nissan Skyline. The former hot rod star had opened up a comfortable cushion over Larry Wilford and Gary Dunkley. Apart from the trailing brake duct, all appeared to be okay with Van der Merwe when the Ford suddenly cut out. Morganrood and the Sasol Mazda MX-6 whipped past the ailing Sasol Ford to take the lead. Chris Aberdeen also sailed past Van der Merwe, with the complexion of the race suddenly drastically altered. With only its second competitive outing, the Sasol Mazda, brought into the country recently from the USA, was out in front. Morganrood appeared to have the legs on Chris Aberdeen, who found himself elevated from 4th to 2nd. Aberdeen hopes to campaign in the German Touring Car Series in Europe later this year, and recently obtained his helicopter pilot's license. While the Van der Merwe car was parked forlornly at the side of the circuit, other drivers were still hard at work. An intriguing battle had developed between Gary Dunkley's Porsche in Class B and Class C leader Serge Damteau in the factory Toyota Sprinter. Another terrifying scrap had developed in Class D between the Sebat Golf of Ray Wilford and the works Toyota Conquest of young Anthony Taylor. Taylor became the youngest senior champion in South African motorsport history a couple of seasons ago when he won the Formula GTI Championship. Now back in saloon cars after a season on the sidelines, Taylor has lost none of his flair. There was more drama on lap 7 when Chris Aberdeen suddenly swept past Ben Morganrood's Sasol Mazda MX-6 to take the lead. After looking to have the race in the bag, Morganrood was hit by fuel pressure problems, with the Mazda forced into retirement. With teammate Terry Moss, Charles Van der Merwe, and now Ben Morganrood out of the race, championship leader Chris Aberdeen suddenly found himself in charge. With a big lead and no pressure from second-place Richard Sorensen in the privately entered Count Byron Accord Sound Audi, Aberdeen could afford to slacken the pace to conserve car and tyres. For Aberdeen, it was an unexpected bonus, and one which did his championship hopes no harm. With second place Richard Sorensen nowhere in sight, all Aberdeen had to do was coast home. The Class B battle was still being controlled by Jan Coetzee in the Gear Max Nissan Skyline. A steady drive and high attrition rate amongst the Class A cars saw Coetzee slot into fourth place overall. Coetzee had built up a 4-second lead over closest rival Larry Wilford. With Coetzee having stamped his authority in Class B, the fight in Class D also appeared to have been settled. Here, Anthony Taylor, in the Toyota Conquest, had gradually pulled away from Ray Wilford in the VW Golf. One battle that was still raging was that between Gary Dunkley in the Porsche and Class C leader Serge Damso in the Toyota Sprinter. Their personal feud lasted the entire 8 laps, with the Class C Toyota continuously hounding the Class B Porsche. One of the most versatile drivers in South Africa, Damso always looks at home behind the wheel. Apart from his expertise on the track, Damso is a multiple South African rally champion, and the Somerset West car dealer has over the years proved to be a loyal servant for Toyota. The high attrition rate also saw Richard Sorensen make a dramatic move up the field in the Count Byron Accord Sound Audi. Sorensen last year won the Class B championship and is in his first season among the Class A big guns. For Chris Aberdeen, it was plain sailing all the way to the flag. Richard Sorensen was a distant second, with local man Ivor Roche third in the Hypersphere Ford. Aberdeen may have fed off the misfortunes of others, but in national championship motor racing, you take victories any way they come. Heat 1 saw Audi Quattros in the first 2 places. Roche was followed home by Class B winner Jan Coetzee. Class C went to Serge Damso, with Anthony Taylor the Class C winner.
I was in the fray for a while, and then the three of them went into rifle together, and well, somebody had to lose, and it happened to be Terry. And then I chased Ben for a bit, but I just couldn't catch him, so I decided to just settle down and conserve the car and tyres. And then I was lucky, Ben went off as well, so I was very fortunate, very happy.
Did you actually spring off, or did you just...
No, just stopped. Ran out of fuel pressure. There's fuel in the tank, but the pressure is messing around. So the same problem yesterday, we thought we had it licked, and obviously we haven't.
The Rothmans Audi of Terry Moss and the Sasol Ford Telstar of Salvo van der Merwe were the major casualties in Heat 1. Neither car made it to the start of Heat 2. But quick work in the pits saw Ben Morgan's Sasol Mazda MX-6 back in the fray. First Heat winner Chris Aberdeen in the Works Rothmans Audi Quattro and Richard Sorensen in the Count Byron Accord Sound Audi led the field around for the Heat 2 rolling start. As the cars got underway, Ivor Roche missed a gear in the Hypersphere Ford, with Jan Coetzee having to take avoiding action in the Gear Max Nissan Skyline. The race cam in Serge Damso's Toyota Sprinter provided a bird's-eye view of all the action. First it was Coetzee, who again got a full head of steam, and then it was Roche who stormed past the Toyota. Unperturbed by what was going on behind him, Aberdeen was quickly into his stride and went into an immediate lead. Morgan Root started into second spot in the Mazda, followed by Sorensen, Coetzee, and the rest of the field. With no Moss and van der Merwe, it looked certain to develop into a 3-car race out in front. Aberdeen could make no impression on the Sasol Mazda when running behind Morgan Root in Heat 1. It was going to be interesting to see if the Rothmans Audi could hold off the Mazda, with Morgan Root sitting comfortably in second position. It suddenly all became academic when a front brake locked and Aberdeen spun in front of Morgan Root, entering the pit on lap 2. Race cams in the Mazda and on the Audi front spoiler captured all the action. Once again, some hard-fought duels were starting to develop further down the field. After his poor start, Ivor Roche was working his way through the Class B cars, but the pressure was now on Aberdeen, who had plenty of work ahead of him if he was to catch Morgan Root. The race cam mounted low on the front spoiler of the Audi provides an unusual and high-speed close-up of the East London circuit. There were more problems for Chris Aberdeen, with smoke pouring from the Rothmans Audi, where a brake duct was rubbing against the front wheel. This dropped Aberdeen back to third place behind Sorensen, with both Audis losing ground to Morgan Rood. Although the brake problem was slowing him down, Aberdeen was managing to keep pace with Sorensen. With modified touring car races run over only 8 laps, there's no thought of drivers calling into the pit for quick running repairs. All Aberdeen could do was to soldier on and hope the situation did not worsen. With Aberdeen in trouble and Sorensen gradually falling further behind, Morgan Rood looked to be in a safe position. For all that, he must have been worried about a return of the fuel pressure gremlins that plagued the Mazda in practice and in Heat 1. After inheriting the lead in Heat 1, Aberdeen suddenly found Lady Luck smiling on him again. The unfortunate Sorensen was in trouble, with the Audi's engine shutting out, and Aberdeen swept back into second place. Further down the field, Serge Damso was back in control in Class C in the Toyota Sprinter. The only problem on Damso's horizon was a gearbox that was occasionally playing up. Despite that, Damso was in amongst the Class B cars. And this time around, had managed to get in front of Gary Dunkley and the Porsche. Damso had also managed to pick up some debris on the circuit. That was no problem, but the Toyota could do nothing about the superior straight-line speed of the Porsche down the main straight. Out in front, Ben Morganrud was having matters all his own way in the Sasol Mazda MX-6. It wasn't quite a Sunday afternoon drive through the park, but with the Audis no longer a factor, Morganrud could avoid having to take chances. Chris Aberdeen was now starting to come under pressure from Ivor Roche in the Hypersphere Ford, with Class B leader Johan Coetzee hot on the heels of the Class A cars in the gear-match Nissan Skyline. The former Wesbank champion, Coetzee looked to be in line for a rich haul of points. Battle had also been resumed in Class D between Anthony Taylor and Ray Wilford. Taylor in the Toyota Conquest had Wilford climbing all over him in the VW Golf in an early repeat of their first heat dive. Although he could not match the straight-line speed of Gary Dunkley's Sabrat Porsche, Serge Damso never gave up the chase. The Toyota would close right up on Dunkley in the slower parts of the circuit. It was a fascinating duel, with Damso well clear of the rest of the Class C opposition. The duel eventually came to an end when Dunkley spun out. A 360-degree spin saw the Porsche take to the gas, but the highly experienced Dunkley was soon underway again. Damso, in his last Wesbank outing before taking over Toyota's new Sapcar entry, now had a clear track ahead of him, but the late afternoon sun often proved to be disconcerting for the drivers. Damso will hand over the Wesbank car to fellow rally star Enzo Kim. Damso seldom makes mistakes, but in true rally fashion, once or twice strayed onto the dirt. While Damso continued on his merry way, matters weren't going all that well for Steve Corner, who was headed for retirement with smoke billowing from a sick engine. What was left of the field was starting to get strung out as the race progressed. Leader Ben Morganrud had a great deal of track all to himself before he came up on the back markers. Among them were Anthony Taylor and Ray Wilford, who was still involved in a tremendous scrap with a Class D Laurels at stake. For race leaders, lapping back markers who are totally involved in their own race within a race can often lead to unwanted problems. The race cam mounted on the front of Chris Aberdeen's Rothmans Audi gives an indication of the enormous speed differential between the Class A and Class B cars. Although slowed by his brake problem, Aberdeen still managed to close rapidly on the smaller capacity cars. The situation has often led to a tense relationship between the Class A and Class B fraternities. While Aberdeen this time managed to thread his way past the slower cars without any undue problems, the battle between Anthony Taylor and Ray Wilford in Class B was still on. Taylor appeared to be slowly gaining the upper hand, but Wilford was not about to throw in the towel.
The doubts with Ray in the first and the second heat, I think was caused through, in the first heat, gearbox problems. I couldn't select first gear so nicely, and then in the second heat it was overheating a bit, which I don't know where that came from. I think it boiled a bit of water out in the line or something, and it ran a little bit hot in the race.
With race distance rapidly running out, the only thing that could stop Ben Morganrood from taking the new Sasol Mazda MX-6 to victory was a repeat of the mechanical problems that cropped up in Heat 1. This time the Mazda never missed a beat, and with the Audis of Chris Aberdeen and Richard Sorensen both in trouble, all Morganrood had to do was cruise to victory. Aberdeen still had a hold on second place. The Sorensen car was still suffering from an intermittent misfire, and Aberdeen was able to circulate without worrying about too much pressure from behind. While the Class B battle was still raging, Larry Wilford in the Sabat Nissan Skyline was trying desperately to close the gap on Class B leader Johan Garcia. Wilford was pushing hard, but could make no impression on Couture, although the Gearmax car was momentarily held up when Couture got mixed up in the slower part of the circuit in the duel between Taylor and Ray Wilford. Couture managed to get past the two Class B cars without any major problems, and with race distance running out, Wilford was on a hiding to nothing. In his farewell Wesbank race, Serge Damso was still in complete control in Class C in the factory Toyota Sprinter.
I had a good race with the Porsche, and I really enjoyed the race today. And I think it was a good finish for the Wesbank. And I look forward to see Inga Kuhn taking over and continue the success of the car.
On the final lap, Ben Morganrood had put plenty of distance between himself and the two Audis. After the disappointment of the first heat, it was a great result for Morganrood, with the Sasol Mazda MX-6 showing plenty of potential for the future.
Mas is rechts en deelsadel van de Merwe links. En die ligte wat groen slaan is het onmiddellik Mas by die voortou neem, maar Larry Wilford duik uit na die regterkant. Dis Mas van de Merwe, Morganrood, Richard Sorensen, Larry Wilford en Johan Couture. Morganrood saam met ons nou weer.